Hello, everybody. Thanks for making it over here and jumping in. I am absolutely honored to have this individual on the conference today, Sean Dwyer, Director of Sales Dev at ZoomInfo. How you doing today?
I'm very well, Dave. It's great to see you again, and I appreciate the opportunity to be back to speak this year.
I know. I was saying this is the only time we ever see each other, so hopefully we can get you down to Austin this year for the live conference in November.
I told you, sign me up. Sign me up.
Definitely. So, Sean, we're talking sales development leadership today, broad topic. What I want to do is I want to get a sense for the scope of your responsibilities so that we can give everybody the context of where you're coming from, and then dive into issues that you're facing today, and then how you think about those as a senior leader in sales development.
Yeah, certainly. My title here at ZoomInfo is Director of Sales Development. Specifically, I oversee our new business outbound SDR motion. We've gotten pretty specialized as our organization has grown over time, right? So, inbound, outbound, customer. But the new business outbound motion, it's been the team I've been with Discover.org and ZoomInfo for 4.5 years. So it's all I've ever known here. The scope of the team, right? We have reps across the United States. We have reps in our UK office, and we have reps in our Israel office, all part of my organization. It's about 130 SDRs plus the leadership and management team above them. So my scope and responsibility obviously is for the entire part of that department, but I mainly manage the senior and managers on the team. So I manage managers, not the individual contributors directly.
Got it. Okay. And so how many managers work for you?
There are 11.
Okay. And then you report into the VP of Sales Development.
Yeah, that's correct. Brian Vital.
Okay. Brian Vital. Okay. We couldn't get Brian to come and join us today.
I can't speak for that. He's a busy guy, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there.
Okay. Yeah, well, you can speak freely though, right? Because he's not here. He might be listening though. So
yeah, but I never know.
So Sean, as you think through moving forward, we're in such a strange time, and you've got a huge responsibility, especially for outbound. Mm-hmm. Some of the main issues that we talked about are, one, people moving in and out of the organization constantly, and having that, especially in a remote environment. Mm-hmm. How do you think about structuring the team and organizing it in a way that you can, stay on track and focused, with that constant shift?
Yeah, I mean, it is constant. It's something we plan for because it's part of the SDR path, right? At our company is the opportunity to move quickly, right? Based on, performance and merit. So it's not like it's this new thing, but it's a consistent battle, if you will, that we have to kind of face, right? I got to understand that, right? Every month I might lose 3, 4, or 5 of my best SDRs to promotion because they've earned it. Right. And it's always that bittersweet thing, but I love the fact that they get promoted. Right. And then on the back end, right, our process, typically we have reps on our inbound team who get promoted to our outbound team. Right. So it's also keeping in constant communication with those reps that are next up for promotion. Right. And prepping them for that transition to not fielding inbound inquiries anymore, but doing cold prospecting. Right. So I know that it's going to be constant. It's about looking not just a month down the line, but 2 and 3, and understanding, right, how many people am I forecasting to lose to promotion for good reason, right? And then how many do I need to backfill, right, from the headcount standpoint to make sure that we're on top of it, right? And that's the way, right? We have aggressive goals. We're a fast-growing organization, and to keep up with that, we need to make sure that we're sufficiently staffed. I see it as a blessing, not so much as like a curse right now, right? Because it is awesome to see people moving so quickly and accelerating their career, right? Like that's why I do what I do. I love the fact that I get to move people through, and some people get to take that big leap in about a year's time, and it's pretty fast in the industry, but it's because they're ready, right? So knowing that I'm losing people for good reason, But then I get the opportunity, we get to start the cycle all over again with 5, 6, 7 new people, right? When those come into the team, and we hit the ground running, and we plan for it, right? Enablement, training, right? Getting them up to speed, process, the tech stack, right? We put every rep in a position to be the most efficient, and ultimately hit the ground running, decrease the ramp time and make sure that they become contributing members of the team as fast as possible. So, right, a lot of resources go into it, David, but it's something that we've dealt with for a while. And with the heavy promote from within culture, right, that we have, it's just a part of the job now, right? It's not this thing to tackle, but it's just something I plan for on a monthly basis.
And how involved are you in recruiting? Is it working through the managers, or are you directly involved in the recruiting process, interviewing and that type of?
You mean to move people to the outbound team?
Yeah. I mean, getting people in the door, because it seems like if there's a constant shift, right, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably interview anywhere from 6 to 10 people a week as part of the interview processes. We have classes that start really almost every 2 weeks with cohorts of new SDRs. Like, it is that consistent. It's on that much of a schedule that we know, 60 days from now, 90 days from now, 120 days from now, the typical volume of people we may have ready for promotion, just because of the average time people spend in there. But I'm very involved in the recruiting process externally, but also internally, right? When people are eligible for their promotion, right, that's where me and my director counterpart on the inbound side, we have a conversation about those individuals, and then I understand who they are. We schedule time to talk to all of them. We make sure that people are ready, right? The path that they want to follow is, say, new business, first being on our customer facing SDR team, right? And it's a conversation along the way. We don't ever just point and say, you're up, you're going to this team, right? We want them to be on a path to something they want to do long term. Most people don't want to be career SDRs. If you do, tip of the hat. But the idea that we put them in a position to be successful by hearing them out, knowing what they want to do long term, and putting them on the pathway to go do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the onboarding and training, and it's a big company, right? So you've got resources there, but how do you think about taking them from inbound to an outbound rep and giving them everything that they need to become successful?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the tech stack that's at their disposal, what they have and how they leverage it. That differs from, say, our inbound team to our outbound team, right? When you think about inbound, it's inquiries. It's people raising their hand and saying, I want a trial, I want a demo, I want pricing information, right? And we're feeling out. When the outbound side, it's cold outreach, 90% of the time. There's some warm support, right, in the marketing team. But when you think about the cold outreach, it's being comfortable with a cold opener. It's being comfortable with objection handling, right? I think everybody in an outbound SDR role understands that, and you're going to hear no more than you hear yes. It's a different feeling, and it's a different vibe. But when we promote somebody to any level of our SDR team, right, that's new to them, there is a very structured enablement-led training, right, that we've really cultivated over the last couple of years to make sure it hits the points it needs to hit in the order in which we need to hit them, right, to decrease their ramp time, get them up to speed faster. So we're actually very tactical about that. I meet with our SDR dedicated enablement manager weekly, right, to cover the criteria, the agenda, tweaks that we want to make, right, to optimize that ramp time and make sure that, in a day or two, right, they could actually be on the phones, booking meetings, trying out new things, and leveraging different parts of even the ZoomInfo platform that they didn't need to leverage on the inbound team. Right now, they're multi-threading. Now they're finding new contacts and spreading out within existing accounts that we have.
Got it. Okay. And then I want to skip, I had another question, but making tech and data transparent and digestible. I mean, I think that's it was an issue, but it's also something that you think a lot about, because you've got to think about the recruiting, where you are in that process, how people are doing it without, their onboarding and training, but then also all the metrics that go into running an outbound team. So it's a huge challenge, but how do you think about, making sure that the tech and the data is useful for you?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty strong grasp on, the funnel, right? It's something we take very seriously as a go-to-market team, and understanding, what the MQL volume is hot, what it is warm, what it needs to be cold, right? And what that needs to break down between team. And I also try to, have a level of transparency with the team, right? And where we are and how we're doing, and, keeping them in the loop, because there's certain conversations for certain individuals. But I think the more that my team, the larger team is included and understands what we're working towards, and, why the pipeline is so important, and, what building that early in the year means, and how it leads to revenue and, win rates. And again, I don't overwhelm them, but I bring them into the conversation, right? And make them understand, because it's going to make them better salespeople down the line, to understand the process, right, from top of funnel to close. And I think, like, the more that I can take the larger data set of what we're trying to accomplish, what we're doing, what we need to do, and I can make that digestible for them, right? Then they're incentivize, or if you will, they're what's the word I'm looking for, right? They're invested in it further than just, hey, how many meetings can I book today? It's like, hey, okay, what's the greater thing that we're looking towards, right? What are we trying to do by the end of the month or the end of the quarter? I think that idea of being able to keep them in the loop changed everything, right? The transparency, and sometimes some vulnerability of me just being able to say, hey, here's where we are, here's where we need to be, and we're not doing what we need to, or hey, we're actually doing a great job, let's not take our foot off the gas, right? That's equally important.
Okay. And so with having the resources to help you from a revenue ops and sales ops perspective, how much of that do you get involved with in setting up the data so that it's useful? And then do you lean on your partners in operations to help you, get it set up so that it's useful for you?
Yeah, I mean, we meet weekly.
Yeah.
We're very much in tune, and the idea is, from a demand gen marketing standpoint, right? What campaigns are going to go live from a cold approach, right? Do we want to target an industry or a segment in the market? COVID actually created, different pockets of things that we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on. But if it's, certain technologies or size of a company, or companies growing at a certain rate, we're involved at the highest level, right? We're promoting different campaigns. I take ideas from the team, I bring them to the table with the rest of the group, make sure everybody understands what can we actually take action against, who needs to be involved, marketing, sales operations, right? Our campaign specialist team. But no, we're all very much involved. And then it's, like I said, the data asset of ZoomInfo has been at the core of what we've offered for a long time, right? It's the idea that, right, we can make that actionable for people and teach them how to leverage it, teach them to use the automation, set them up for a more efficient workflow. But some of that, again, falls on myself and my managers to coach and lead the team with. And then where we need to bring in, right, those sales ops personnel, or the revenue ops, or demand gen or marketing, right, they're all readily available. We meet weekly, we discuss what's going on, where we can be more optimal. But we do that so the turnaround time is a couple of days, and it's not a couple of weeks, so we can be more proactive than reactive.
That's amazing. And we did a whole conference last year on alignment. That's a huge topic. Might have to do that again, because I mean, that's, if you're at a small company and you're the only sales development leader, then you just got to do it yourself. You got to know, all these systems and stuff. But as you go up, it's more about aligning all these different people, to be able to support you.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of questions. One guy asked, for what's working today with cold calls. I mean, dude, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be sitting in this bunker, man. I'd be on a beach somewhere. Any thoughts on, from the data that you're seeing, how do you guys approach cold calls?
Yeah, I mean, again, this isn't a ZoomInfo stan, but it's the idea that, like, the product that we sell and the product that we use, right, helps warm up even those coldest interactions, right? Understanding what companies, yes, we do.
I bet they use ZoomInfo. Thanks, Harry.
Yeah,
good
but it's that idea, right?
Sorry.
We have that intelligence layer. We need to leverage it, right? And then we just need to navigate and understand who the MPOC is, right? Who's that point of contact that we need to be engaged with, because we know that they're that check signer, that decision maker at the end of the day. Cold calling is always going to be a challenge. It's always going to, I think, be the toughest part of being an SDR, right? You're going to interrupt somebody's day. You're going to be asking them for time then. You're going to be asking them for time to meet after that. But you need to provide value. I mean, I think that's what it always comes down to, right? If you're interrupting somebody and you don't have something that's going to pique their interest in probably the first 15, 20 seconds, right? They're just going to shoo you off, right? You're a time waster at that point versus a value add. right? So that elevator pitch, if you will, that you're teaching your reps, like it's crucial, right? Being able to pique an interest. And if you could have one piece of information that you go into that call with, right? Something relevant about the company, something that they're doing, something they're promoting. It's a way to open up that conversation a little bit more, right? Maybe you buy yourself an extra minute, but sometimes that's all we need, right? But I think just being armed to go after and not just taking a spray and pray approach, that has to be the first order of business.
Big time.
Yeah.
And all this stuff you can use, as an SDR, if you're moving up into sales or even marketing or ops. I mean, becoming more fluent in your customers' language and like the pain points and stuff like that. It all goes in. And what's up, Haber? Jeff Haber asked, what are the elements of your promotion plan? The timing, the content. How do you take them from inbound to outbound, just generally?
Yeah. So late last year, one of my big Q4 projects in the leadership role was to develop with the other leaders what we were calling like our SDR Academy, right? So with every role, including the time that you're still in onboarding, there's very defined teachings and collateral to review. That's followed by a practical demonstration of what has been taught. And then there's also a metric aspect of it. Tenure never comes into play. Like, it doesn't matter how long you've been here. If you've satisfied all the things that we've outlined to be crucial kind of check boxes along the way, right? You become eligible, right? And then we have those for our inbound team and our outbound team and our senior outbound reps, all the way through to becoming an account executive or an account manager, or right, whatever path you follow. But those are the core, right? It's the idea that when you come in, there's learnings that you have to do. There's coursework that you go through. Then you take that to the practical demonstration. And then ultimately the last thing you satisfy is the metric standpoint. And then you become eligible, right? Which leads to that conversation that me and my counterpart have, right? Then we set up interviews with these individuals to make sure we know the path they want to follow, right? Customer, new business, or one of our emerging products, if you will. And we get them situated for the long-term success and the long-term career with ZoomInfo, rather than just plugging them in wherever we need a person, because I don't think that lends well to them long-term and success. And if they're not doing something that they're really passionate about and selling part of the product they're passionate about, it's not going to work. It's not going to last.
Totally. I mean, I mean, not, this is a love fest for sure, but I can't think, especially before COVID, like a cooler place to start as an SD ZoomInfo, because you had that kind of bullpen of all the SDRs in one room, and there was a big sign that said, if you haven't hit your number, turn around. And it had like a loop, and it was just like it looked like a good atmosphere. So how do you put that into a remote environment, now that we're all working from home?
Yeah, I mean, if I wish I had the silver bullet. It's one of those things where
come on, man.
I talked about it a little bit. I think a level of transparency with the team, right? Keeping them in the fold, keeping them in the loop, right? You don't get those kind of passive conversations on the floor anymore, right? It's more of kind of put time on your calendar. Can we catch up, right? People are all over the place. But I think a healthy balance between bringing the whole group together, right, throughout the week, and then bringing different teams together throughout the week in huddles and stand-ups, right? And keeping everybody in the loop, because the one thing that I think we thrived on in the office setting was that kind of knowledge sharing, right? From peer to peer, sitting next to each other, hearing people do cold calls, and then, taking that and trying it yourself, right? We don't have that happening today. So we need to be a little bit more deliberate about where we're sharing that information. And, I run, huddles in the morning for a lot of the outbound teams, right? Just to bring people up to speed. And today's even a great example. My morning huddles today with the outbound organization, I took a step back, right? And then I gave a couple of the reps on the team the floor, right? And I let them just speak peer to peer, coach peer to peer. Here's what's working for me. Here's what I've been doing more recently. Here's where I've been seeing success. Here's how I'm booking this many meetings, or here's how I'm holding a show rate on my meetings of 80%, right? It's because I take these tactical steps after I hang up the phone with a prospect to ensure that they're going to show up. So I think there's different things we've tried along the way. But I think the hardest thing to do is not to be a dashboard manager or, be a micromanager, because, it's all you've got in front of you, right? But I think the idea that you've got a group and you got a routine and people can get comfortable with that, and then they also know where their resources are. So hey, if I need Sean, I can reach out to Sean, right? I can send him a Slack message. I can put some time on his calendar, right? And we can catch up and make sure maybe outside of our regular routine of a one-to-one meeting, right? He's always available. So I think that played a big role. But yeah, man, if I had the silver bullet, I'd be sharing it. I promise.
Big time. And there's some great advice going on in the chat. One of these is from Derek. It says, just do this Tenbound 9-point framework. That is great advice. I would definitely go join Tenbound Plus and get that for pennies on the dollar. Okay, so last question for you. We sit at the intersection of all these departments, right? And at a healthy organization like ZoomInfo, you know, you're forging alignment. What happens if an SDR comes up to you, they're like, my manager sucks? Or, you know, a VP, Brian would never do this, but a VP goes, that manager sucks, you got to fire him. You know, how do you sit in between as the director and like deal with all these things?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, like I have my team's back, right? That's why they're on my team, right? I trust them. We have a really great relationship. They're great at what they do, right? It's why they have the responsibility of being a manager on my team, right? So I won't take those things lightly, right? But I'm also not going to let somebody sit there and right make accusations that maybe are unfounded, or somebody's having a bad day and right they reach out to me with a pretty aggressive note to go do something like that. Right. If it's a rep, right, I'm going to understand the issue, right? I'm going to understand where they're coming from and what happened, what transpired. And I know that I have a relationship with my managers on my team that like we're going to be able to have an open discussion about it, right? Me and that person, right? We're going to figure out what went wrong, what happened, was something relayed incorrectly, was something lost in translation, or did they do something that was, you know, pretty out of line, right? Like having tough conversations is part of leadership, right? It's going to come up, and it's going to come up somewhat frequently, unfortunately, whether it's a rep or a manager, right? You know, people aren't performing well, or people do something that was, you know, obviously out of line, right? You got to be willing and able to have a conversation with somebody that's not fun, right? If it comes from somebody above me, right? Like I respect those individuals, right, across the board, right? I need to understand where they're coming from and what happened to warrant such a message, right? Because that would be quite an accusation or quite a request from a VP here. So I think it's just understanding that initially, like I'm going to have my reps back, right? And that's how my team's been built, and they all know that. But if there's action to take and conversations to have, like I have to be honest with them. I have to have a direct conversation around what was relayed to me. I got to understand from their standpoint, like what happened, what they did, what they think transpired. But we're going to have to come to the bottom of it, because I don't need a VP at our business, right, thinking down on somebody on my team and that matriculating and that being kind of like, oh, David's a bad manager, so like avoid him, right? Like that would be terrible for our organization. So I think it's just a matter of getting to the bottom of it, but it would start with me certainly, you know, standing up for my team and letting me handle those situations versus somebody else telling me what to do with it.
Yeah. It was something like Edward Demings, who's a business consultant guy, said, you know, everybody's got opinions, but you got to bring data, you know? And it seems like, well, they're lucky to have you, you know, I mean, you've got their back, and having those tough conversations is one of the hardest things about leading any organization, you know, because you definitely, if you get into management and you just want everybody to be your buddy and to get along and stuff like that, it's not going to work, because right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Okay, so we've got about 30 seconds. There's a ton of questions here. There's one, I think it got answered already, but you promote from inbound to outbound, right?
Correct.
They go through that classic stair step.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And just last quick question. You know, for a while, people were starting people off in outbound and then promoting them to inbound to get the leads, but you guys don't do that, right?
No, you know what? And I get that on interviews, right? Like
Okay.
people respond and say, I get to handle hot leads first. I hear that actually quite often. And yeah, right. It's the largest team within our sales development org. it's a very process-driven role, right? Because we're quickly following up on leads. There's a lot of automation in play. The tech stack is paramount, right, at that part of the funnel for us. So it's teaching people the tech, it's teaching people the product, the framework, right, the talk tracks, the personas, right? Then when they can move to outbound and be taking a cold approach, they take everything they learned during that tenure, right? And then they can apply it from a cold standpoint, knowing, hey, I've talked to VPs of sales in this industry, and I've talked to people who sell into this market, right? Now I've got a framework to go outbound, right, and leverage that. But yeah, that's the thought process behind it and why we shape it that way. And yeah, I mean, to this point, it's worked for us pretty well.
Big time. It's a learning process.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, this has been so interesting. I think well, you're going to come back at around 12, and you're going to go into the tech landscape.
Correct.
Which is going to be awesome. So everybody hang around, jump in that at 12. Sean's going to be back. And then everybody who was asking, they all wanted to know about prospecting and cadences and data and stuff like that. Jump into the lead IQ session for sure, because they're going to go through like a very set prospecting plan for outreach. And you should jump in too, Sean. You could still learn some stuff. But Sean, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and we'll see you back around noon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, David, I really appreciate the opportunity to be back this year.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.